Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So for today's sketchbook doodle session, I want to kind of salvage this spread as I kind of left it off at a very weird state. And let me explain kind of why I abandoned this. So you can see that there's a ballpoint pen sketch on this side, which affected Masaki's face on this side. And the problem might be a little bit weird on why this kind of occurred, and it didn't really click in my brain on why I couldn't do it in the steps that I did do this in. So at the top it does say that while I decided to plan out this spread, didn't plan for the ballpoint pen to ruin this. So as I'm going to kind of do a little bit of mixed media here and there, I'm going to try my best to salvage mostly the Masaki figure in the front, and I'll color some of the adjacent little doodles on the side as well, just because they are in the vicinity of the rest of this Masaki figure. So I'm going to be covering up Masaki and trying my best to paint over the majority of him with gouache, and then we'll go over some areas with ballpoint pen after to kind of bring out certain parts of this spread. Just because, like I said, I kind of want to salvage a little bit. But let me bring you back to the beginning of where I was actually starting to thumbnail and plan and my initial idea for this entire spread before I became super frustrated to the point where I literally stopped everything, closed my sketchbook, and didn't work on it for a few days because I was really disappointed with my decision. So basically, I was doing a bunch of alcohol marker drawings on Bristol board and cardstock and a bunch of different things just for fun, and I've been really enjoying using the Ohuhu markers, the Artex markers, and just alcohol markers in general because the color payoff is just very vibrant. They're fun to blend. I feel like they get very close to almost like some of my digital pieces sometimes. So I was having fun doing that. So I was kind of thinking of doing a spread of Masaki where I would draw mostly maybe him or a sketch of him or two on the spread, but in the background I would have different sectioned off boxes where they would display different, I guess, objects or items or anything that I associate Masaki with. So one thing you would see on the left side of Masaki, there's a bike with a basket with flowers. So I feel like he'd be the type that wouldn't really drive. I know driving in just Japan and a lot of places in Asia is just not really a viable option just because the amount of population. I feel like because a lot of people live in more condensed areas and stuff, I feel like the mode of transportation tends to be, let's say, the train, buses, bicycles, walking, mopeds, that kind of stuff. So I feel like Masaki would be the type to ride a bicycle to work and to his university, that kind of stuff, or running errands. But I feel like he'd be the type to also have a basket just because I feel like he would carry either plants or his groceries that way rather than in a backpack or a messenger bag or anything like that. So in my Pinterest boards for Masaki, I do have this really cute kind of pastel greenish looking bike. It doesn't look too kiddish or anything like that. It actually looks really cool, but I really like that bike, so I decided to put that on the side. I was going to basically do the edges of this spread with alcohol markers and do foliage to kind of frame the whole piece. And then I had either a few flowers, clovers, and a few pictures that I wanted to do for Masaki for the spread. So before I get off topic too much, the idea is just to basically draw things that I associate Masaki in a very what feels kind of like a collage-y way, where I wanted to have certain sketches overlapping with each other, or just having certain things pop to the front versus some things into the back. And I decided to format that all on a sticky note, which is on the previous page, to plan it out. So I was putting a lot more effort into making the spread look cute, and I had to plan to do this with alcohol markers, which is why I decided to pick a full spread where I could kind of color with markers without needing to worry about bleed through to the other pages, because I wouldn't really care, because I kind of picked a spread that allowed me to have that option because either side of the paper had no sketches on the other side at the time. Now, after I did do the sketch and I did do the line work with a water-based marker, I believe I used the Magic Fly marker in the color kind of like a brown, and it looked really cute. You can see the lines right here for the bicycle, the flowers, and even Masaki in the very beginning. But my problem was that I decided to film, or I guess like I told you guys, I took a break from working on this for a few days. So prior to that, I was filming the video for Femine. So for the Femine piece, I decided to do thumbnailing in my sketchbook so that I could get a better idea. Now the problem arose was that I thought it'd be smarter for me to be like, oh, I'll do the sketches of Femine on the opposite sides of this Masaki spread because it would be covered up in alcohol markers after the fact. So I thought it'd be easier to do it that way rather than let the bleed through go with the alcohol markers and then draw on top with ballpoint pen afterwards on kind of like the aftermath of the bleed through, which is usually the steps I would take when I do anything like that, because sometimes when I do thumbnailing or just random sketches or doodles and stuff, and I don't really care about them or like care about them being, I guess, like seen very easily, I wouldn't mind drawing on top of like the bleed through of alcohol markers. But for some reason I was like, oh, I'll just, doodle Femine first with ballpoint pen, and then I would do the alcohol marker drawings at a later date. Now, the reason why I chose ballpoint pen, even though usually when I do like thumbnailing sketches and stuff, I do it in pencil, is the fact that I thought I would have an easier time seeing the ink drawing after the bleed through had occurred. But my problem is that this paper is extremely thin. It's notebook paper. It's kind of light, it's very thin, and the alcohol marker seeps through quite easily. So as soon as I finished the ballpoint pen drawings, the next day I decided that I will just color Masaki and do his skin tone first, which is what I usually do for any drawing. I usually focus on the face, and as soon as I layered the first few layers of marker, I saw the kind of bleed through that was taking place, and it basically started to suck up a lot of the ballpoint pen ink. Okay, so before I continue with the rest of this, I'm basically using a brown ballpoint pen. It's a Papermate Inkjoy pen, and I'm doing a lot of detailing for the sunflowers, a little bit for Masaki and the adjacent flowers on the right side of Masaki, just to bring some of the sketches out. I feel like the sunflowers kind of needed it because I decided to do a very light wash of yellow, a little bit of brown, that kind of minty kind of green, a blue, and a little bit more of an earthier toned color, but got mixed with the brown of the fine liner because it's not waterproof. It kind of mixed with my paints, and the brown ballpoint pen kind of brings it out and pushes it forward, which I think my favorite part of the spread is actually like the Masaki figure alongside with the sunflowers on the very left. I think it looks really pretty with kind of muted colors and just the ballpoint pen. But I'm trying to see if I can stay on track. So now that I kind of more or less salvaged this spread a little bit more, I decided to fill in some other spaces like the silhouetted Masaki with the flowers with kind of more of a moodier sunset background. Not moodier, it's like a sunset background for the most part. But I decided to leave the text in as a reminder of why the spread looks the way it does, but everything else I pretty much left untouched. And this is kind of like the salvage spread. But because I did use alcohol markers for this spread, and I don't mind that I did thumbnailings on the other side, I am also going to basically flip over the page and cover up the bleed through with post-it notes and some other stuff as well, so that I don't have to worry about, messing around with covering this bleed through now. So you can see there's a lot of bleed through from the markers that I layered and some of the areas that I did decide to color. And I have these really cute sticky notes that I got off of Amazon just because I was adding just like a few things to an order because I needed to order something for my mom. So I decided to order all that at once, and I saw these really cute sticky notes, and I wanted to use them in my sketchbook because my previous stack of sticky notes is running super low, and the easiest way for me to cover up like different sketches or bleed through like alcohol bleed through and stuff is sticky notes in my sketchbook. So I think this is the quickest way for me to just block out an area. I'm also gonna glue down the sticky notes with some just glue, just a normal, I think this is like photo sticker glue or something by Elmer's. But I'm doing that just to make sure that the sticky notes are fully adhered and they won't peel off at some point. I'm going to do a quick sketch and then we'll get to inking for this particular spread. So hopefully I can remember where exactly I left off. I know this, I don't know, probably the way I'm speaking right now seems a little bit more frantic. If anything, I don't know if it's because the mood that I was in. I just got super frustrated with that previous spread. And I needed to do something about it, so I really wanted to fix it up. But yeah, I ended up seeing the bleed through from the alcohol marker sucking up that previous ink. But a part of me was like, okay, you have to stop adding alcohol markers to this page, otherwise you're just going to see more and more of that ink, and maybe I can just do watercolor on top instead and do the spread that way and then redo the inks. But I decided that maybe I was going crazy, and I thought that once the page dried, maybe the alcohol ink was just like, how to explain this? So sometimes when you use alcohol inks on thinner paper, you can see the paper turns almost translucent, and you can see some of the drawings or like lines from the previous page, because I've had that happen before, especially with thinner paper. So I think I was low-key just telling myself like, oh, it's the same situation, which was not the case. It wasn't gonna dry and the ink was just gonna go away. So that's when I got super frustrated. I literally closed the book, put it away for a few days, and I was like, nope, I'm done. I think it's also because I was planning to film the whole process of me planning the sketch page layout, alongside with like the planning, the line work, the sketching, and then the coloring. And I wanted to do a specific like color palette for it all. And when it didn't turn out because of the unexpected ballpoint pen incident, I just quit at that point. So yeah, now that I'm in a better headspace, I think it was easier for me to paint over Masaki. And I still feel like I'm rusty with gouache. I haven't painted quite a while, especially in the sketchbook. I think the last time I painted with the gouache was probably the Ike piece, I'm assuming, or the Silver Wolf piece, which is from several months ago, if anything. Yeah, I think it's a Silver Wolf one. So I haven't done that since I think the beginning of June. And I feel like I need to revive my gouache palette. A lot of my paints are getting a little bit on the harder side, so I feel like my gouache paint is feeling a little watered down because I'm adding so much water to reactivate my paints to get like a certain consistency or a certain color or thickness of the paint. Yeah, I think that concludes the story of like my mishap and the reason why I got super frustrated with that previous spread. So back to what I'm working on right now. So like I mentioned, I covered up the bleed through with the post-it notes. I decided to pick the green and the brown because I think that they fit Masaki's colors a lot easier. Pretty much his color scheme is basically green and brown at the core of it. And I thought it just fits a lot better, and I decided to not do black ink this time, and I decided to pull out I think it's the Uniball Vision. It might be the Uniball Vision, and the color blue. And this is like the micro size, and this actually feels a little bit reminiscent because I used to use I don't remember the brand, but it is a needlepoint pen, and I love using needlepoint pens for these kind of ink drawings. They dispense, it dispenses a lot of ink at once, and there's a little bit less line weight variation, but it's very nice for me to get some solid areas or just do like very quick kind of, I guess it's like hatching at this point. and it just looks really nice because sometimes when I color in larger areas with hatching or just filling it in very solid, it gives a nice kind of like flat look, or just the color looks a little bit more punchy and bold. So I really love this kind of ink. Needlepoint pens, I feel like they're kind of my favorite when it comes to doing these kinds of drawings in my sketchbook, because I don't really have to press like, or how am I supposed to say this? I don't need to feel worried about pressing too hard because it is a metal tip, and the ink dispenses so nicely that usually for the most part I don't get like scratchy lines or very faded lines, so I can have a little bit more confidence when I'm inking, kind of like longer strokes if anything, or if I want to leave kind of bolder lines, it can do that. But the pens that I used to use was like, I think it's a dark blue one and a red pen, and the set that I got from the Uniball set before also comes with black, blue, and red, so it kind of fit that same color palette that I really liked. And I used to use these needlepoint pens to doodle on top of sticky notes that covered previous bleed through in previous sketchbooks like a few years ago, because I have a memory of a specific sketch in one of my old sketchbooks of I think it's either a yellow post-it note or a pink post-it note. I want to say it's yellow, just because I remember using a yellow highlighter later on to accent the rest of the page, but it looked really nice with this kind of punchier dark blue color, and the inking is just kind of fun if you can kind of chunk in a lot of the value, which I feel like the left side of this kind of spread of Masaki is kind of weaker, and there's a particular sketch where Masaki's like waving his hand and there's like a text box where I start to add in more value, and I think that's kind of what I was going for in the beginning, but the other sketches I just didn't really like, so I didn't spend a lot of time inking them properly. Also, for the sticky notes, I usually don't add that many sticky notes like that. If anything, probably the sticky note that is green at the bottom left hand corner, and then the sticky note that's kind of like that pale brown in the upper right hand corner of the left side page, if that makes sense, is probably what I would have actually placed onto the spread to cover up bleed through. But I added the other ones because I thought it'd just be neat to give a little bit more color. But I kind of wish I added a few, or just like even the small brown one, like at least one of them on the right side, so that I could have the entire spread to be a little bit more cohesive. So the downside about these little sticky notes is that I feel like the adhesive is actually not that strong, so I do recommend gluing down your sticky notes if you don't mind it being like fully stuck down. I don't remember if I showed it at all in the video, but in previous sketchbooks, and this is like when I would draw in my sketchbook a little bit more religiously, I would keep like stickers and scrap paper in the back envelope or pocket of the sketchbook, but I would also keep a little pad of sticky notes inside the back of my like sketchbook. So usually I would pick maybe like 5 sheets, and I would have 2 different colors. Usually I think it's like pink and blue. And I'd stick it into the back part of my sketchbook so that when I'm on the go, or I was in class and I needed to write something down and all I had was my sketchbook and my pencil case, I have something where I can write down that's not permanent in my sketchbook. But also, if I ever run into the problem where I want to cover up a drawing for whatever reason, I have sticky notes to do that. Now, I probably should have mentioned this at the very beginning of the video. In sketchbooks, or even like anything that you're doing for yourself that's like not for an audience, not for like submissions, not for like, it's not for anybody but you, I don't think there's a need for you to cover up any of your drawings in your sketchbook anyways. I definitely think it's just like, it's definitely like due to preferences, or like people have the tendency to want their sketchbook to look aesthetically pleasing, or in my case, even though I wanted that sketch page, whatever you want to call it, the spread, to look aesthetically pleasing, my main gripe is the fact that it reminds me of my mistake that I could have avoided. And it feels very dumb because if I literally did the alcohol marker drawing first and then drew with ballpoint pen on the back side afterwards, there would have been no problem, and that's the usual steps I would have took anyways. But I thought I was being smart by being like, oh, if I don't want to ruin like the ballpoint pen drawings, I will just sketch them first and then later on do the alcohol marker, which was the wrong steps to take. And I didn't really want to be reminded of that same mistake so like blaring in my face, so I definitely wanted to cover up that ink bleed through. But I definitely still left the ballpoint pen note to myself that says like, well, I decided to plan out this spread, because I should remember my stupid decisions here and there. But I think that's about it. I definitely think like if you have a sketchbook, treat your sketchbook however you want to treat your sketchbook. Make a mess in it, make it perfect, whatever you want to do, because literally it's just for yourself. I definitely think like, you know, whatever tendencies that you have, you know, try to work with it. If you have a sketchbook, whether or not you want to only do finished pieces, or maybe you only want to do like chicken scratch doodles, whichever you want to do. But that is basically it for today's little sketching session and cover up of this little spread. I think this looks actually a lot cuter, and the left side looks really cute with the sunflowers, I think. But I think that's it. There's a little bit of ghosting from the blue inking drawings, and I would love to do a full spread with just the ink, or maybe one finished piece with this kind of blue ink look. I think it looks kind of cool. But I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!